All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening for the Real Deal with Student Pro Connect. Student Pro Connect is a social networking website and app where students and industry professionals can connect. If you are a student or someone looking to change your career, you will be able to find valuable insight firsthand from people in the field. If you are an industry professional, this is a great way for you to give back and share your story to inspire the new generation. The purpose of this segment is to provide the real deal behind what it takes to start and thrive in various fields. Every segment will feature an industry professional telling their story and sharing their insight. If you have not done so already, please sign up on Student Pro Connect by going to our website, www.studentproconnect.com, or downloading our app, which is available both in Google Play and the App Store. Please also subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Please feel free to type in your comments and questions during the show. Now, without further ado, I am very pleased to present our guest for this evening. She is an assistant professor. She's the chair of her business administration department, and she's also the director of business incubators. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Glenda Evans.
Good evening, everybody.
Thank you so much for being with us tonight, Glenda.
Not a problem. It's my pleasure.
Thank you. So let's get right into it. So what is the role of a professor? So a professor is known as a post-secondary teacher. So they obviously are teaching different subjects, academic or technical. And the idea here is beyond the high school level. So they teach at public, private colleges, universities, professional schools, junior and community colleges. And outside of class times, they also do a few things as well. So Glenda, can you kind of walk us through the day of a professor? What does it look like?
Our days are never the same except for our schedule. So as a professor, you usually have a schedule of either Monday, Wednesday, Friday courses, or sometimes you're lucky enough to have Tuesday and Thursday courses. If you teach on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, you would have classes every 50 minutes for however many classes that you have. Full loads are different for each university. So for instance, at the university that I'm at, a full load is teaching 4 classes each semester. So you're basically teaching for 12 hours per week. And then you're also doing office hours for all of your students as well. The amount of office hours will vary. It can go from 8 hours a week to 10 to 15, depending on the university. The day those classes, and it's also going to be mentoring with the students. It's going to be research. It's going to be talking to parents sometimes, even at the university level. And you're also making sure that you are doing your career preparedness activities as well. So you may attend seminars or workshops to increase your knowledge in the subject that you're in.
Okay. Wow, that seems like a lot. So like you said, there's no set schedule every day. Every day looks different.
Every day is different depending on the student you're talking to.
Exactly. And then now when it comes to conducting research, is that something that takes a lot of time?
It does. Most professors are required to publish at least twice a year. Okay. And so a publication, it can take you about a year sometimes to write, sometimes more, depending on how deep you're going into the subject and depending on the journal that you're writing for.
Okay. All right, so let's look at the academic industry. So first and foremost, there is room for opportunity here. So post-secondary teachers or college professors are projected to grow 9% from 2019 to 2029, which is higher than most professions. So one thing we hear a lot about in, the academic profession is tenure. You want to get tenure. So can you explain to us what this even means? What is tenure? What is the rank system? What is this all about?
So tenure is what you're going to do when you want to attach yourself to a university for a lifetime. So tenure professors are those that no longer have to do a yearly contract. They are with the university and they have a place with the university for their lifetime. Within tenure, of course, you have to go through the ranks that you have on the screen here, and it starts with instructor. So if you're thinking about becoming a professor, it's something that you thought about, it's something that you've always wanted to do. It's very easy to become an instructor at a university, especially at a community college in your area, if you have a master's. So a lot of professors have started out that way. So if you have a master's and you have at least 12 hours or 24 hours for some of a specific discipline, then usually you are able to be an instructor. An instructor is going to go in and for the most part, you're just going to teach classes. You don't have the research responsibility and you don't have usually the advisement responsibility, but it depends again on the university. Mm-hmm. An assistant professor is a little bit another step higher. An assistant professor, you have a PhD at that point, or you have at least 20, 25 years of industry experience for a specific discipline. An assistant professor now, you are just starting your research. Maybe you just got your PhD and you are learning how to be a professor and how to do your research, how to get grants as well. And then you'll go into that associate professor. At the university that I'm at, to be an associate professor, you have to do so much fundraising for the university. So there are specific amounts that you have to raise in order to become an associate professor. And you have to also be an associate professor to become tenure. So your tenure basis and getting that permanent position is based on you coming in and becoming an associate, doing research, teaching your courses, and fundraising for the university as well. A full-on professor has already received those grants. They are made a name for themselves in the grant industry. They made a name for themselves in the research industry, and they have proven that they are strong professors for the university.
Wow. So I guess you could say once you hit that professor level, it's kind of like, that's it. You're vested.
Absolutely. It has to be something that you want to do, because even though a professor, for the most part, you work 9 months out of a year. You're off during the Christmas holiday usually, and you're off during the summer. But those times are what you're going to use for your research. Those are the times where you're going to write grants to receive grant funding. But if you're doing it at that point, you should be vested. You are vested in what you're doing.
Exactly. So technically you really never off. So a lot of people think especially people in education, you're only working when school is on, but that's not the case here. You're researching, you're doing other things in order to move up the ranks. So it's not just about the teaching.
Exactly. Remember, even though you're a professor, you're not in industry, you still have to stay industry ready, because you're teaching people to go into the industry. So you have to make sure that you have relevant knowledge of what's going on. You have to upskill yourself at all times. And so during that off period, you should be upskilling yourself.
Got it. And then last thing here is length of time. How long does it take to get from assistant professor to professor?
So instructor usually is to assistant professor is usually about 3 years or so.
Okay.
And remember, you have to get that PhD. PhD program, it can take you from 5 years to 7. Usually the limit is 7. If you don't get it at 7 years, you have to start over. And so that's going to depend on how long it takes you to get that PhD. Mm-hmm. Assistant professor to associate professor, that's really up to you. How much are you trying to get those scholarships? Those grants, how much are you doing your research? How many publications are you doing? Once you have said that you are an
that time. And that's what it's based on, just what you produce, pretty much.
Absolutely, yes.
Got it. Got it. All right, so let's look at salary. Of course, a very important factor here. As of May of 2020, the median annual wage for college professors was about $81,000. But you can see on the graph here, it seems like, it does change based on specialization. So at the high end here, we have law professors, medical professors, and then kind of on the lower end, seems more of the arts driven specializations, drama, English, music. So I guess depending on your specialization, your salary will be different. Is that right?
Yeah, so again, go back to what we just talked about when it comes to research and when it comes to receiving grants. So if you look at the areas that have the highest funding, those are the areas that you can find the most grants for those disciplines. And it's also going to be areas where you can do a lot of research. Research and grants brings money into the universities. When there's a grant that has been awarded to one of the professors and it has gone through the grants department, the university takes what's called indirect costs straight off the grant. So those monies are going towards the university immediately. And so because of that, they will pay more for certain disciplines to come into the university because they have more access to more grants funding. So it's easier, especially for a private university, to pay the salary of that person. Whereas you may not see that as much in the lower arts. Now, I'm surprised to see biology there because biology, again, would have a lot of grantsmanship there. Yes. But it's all tied to how much you are going to give back to the university and what your worth is, honestly.
Got it. So that's probably the biggest factor, is how much your specialization is bringing in with grants, and what your ability to raise funds for the university in that particular specialization will impact your salary.
Absolutely, because remember, most universities are nonprofit for the most part, or as a state organization. And so if it's a nonprofit, you have to still have revenue coming in over and above tuition in order for the university to survive.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Okay, so obvious topic here. We all have been impacted by the pandemic. I can't think of an industry that hasn't been. Definitely higher education has been impacted. From the students' perspective, US college enrollment dropped to the lowest level in almost 2 decades last year. A lot of students put their academic plans on hold because they didn't really want to pay large sums of money to attend online only classes, not to mention a lot of things they miss, the campus life, their friends, social life, just the college experience. So that's the student side. And then the professor side as well has been impacted. So they found that professor pay actually decreased at 2/3 of colleges and universities. And the amount of wage growth also was its lowest since 1972. At 26% of institutions, the number of full-time faculty members fell by at least 5%. So we have seen a big impact here. What has been your experience?
We've seen that impact as well. So at the university that I'm at, we are in what's called retrenchment. And so with retrenchment, every department had to decrease its expenses by a certain percentage. And a lot of that was done by, in some aspects, decreasing the number of faculty that were there. Thank God a lot of the departments had people that were retiring, and so that they didn't have to let go of a lot of people that actually wanted to stay. But it has impacted us greatly. We are virtual, we are fully virtual, and that meant that people had to pivot really quickly. We have gone from being a very paper system to a paperless system in less than a year. And as you know, to implement something like that usually takes a couple of years or so.
Yes.
And so, we say that we are fluid, we are flexible, you have to have patience. And I've also seen that, with the students, there's a big impact too. A lot of our students that are usually in class full time had to go to work because their parents no longer had jobs. And so they had conflicts with school. There was people whose families were impacted by COVID or had COVID, or some of the students had COVID themselves. And so, they may not have been able to come to class and finish classes. So you see more incompletes because they were ill or a family member was ill. And the mental state has been um, a big impact on people's mental health. So, as a professor right now, you are, yes, teaching school and teaching courses, but you're almost like a counselor at the same time. We usually don't have to take externalities into consideration inside of the classroom. That has not been the case this year. You really have to talk to the student and see what's going on and understand that class just might not be their priority. They want to be there. They have to do things, but there are other things that are impacting them way more than what this assignment is now. So we had to change our ways a lot.
Wow. Now, do you think, as we're trying to combat the pandemic and COVID starts to decline, do you think things will be back to what they were?
I don't think they'll ever be back to what they were. We are bringing students back, but we're still having the social distance. You still have companies. So we have companies that come to visit. They may still not be able to come to campus. Some students may not feel comfortable enough coming, but does that mean that they shouldn't get their education at the same time? We have had to make a lot of changes in our policies and in our procedures. Like I said, we were a paper system. I'm gonna think twice from here on out before I give a paper exam, even if we're in person. So you want to have as little contact as possible. We are probably going to have a hybrid program. So imagine teaching half in front of you and half on a computer screen at the same time. So this is that upscaling that we talked about is going to be important.
So a lot of these changes are actually here to stay, it seems like.
I think so. I think so.
Wow. All right, so let's talk about the education part. We kind of touched on it a little bit. So what is the pathway to getting there? I know you kind of talked about getting the PhD. Do you have to, I guess one of them, we'll talk about this later, but, if you want to be a professor, do you have to go into education? So kind of explain to us, what is the educational journey?
So of course you're going to have that bachelor's degree. That's that 4-year degree. And if you're thinking about even remotely becoming a professor, at that point, you want to be very specific about the discipline that you're studying. For me, when I got my bachelor's, I had no idea that I would be a professor later, but it wasn't an industry that I desired to be in. So mine was business administration with accounting in it. And then when I got my master's degree, I knew at that point that I did want to try to teach or to become a professor. So I was very specific with what masters I received. You'll see a lot of people that get the MBA. I'm the chair of an MBA program, so I'm always advocate of MBA. But if you don't want to teach in a generalized area, and let's say for me, it was accounting that I wanted to do, with that master's degree, you should be looking at the specialty that you would like to teach in. Because this is when doors are going to open up for you. This is when you would be able to go out and try it at a community college, like I talked about, or you would be able to try it at a for-profit university. So be specific about what discipline you want to teach in when you look at that master's degree, because that is going to give you the qualifications to teach that you may not always get in your PhD program. Your PhD, that's to gain your teaching experience, okay? So you can still have your full-time job and whatever you're doing, and then you can adjunct, which means that you might be teaching 3 hours out of a week, and you're gaining that knowledge. You usually will have a mentor, and you're learning the ins and outs of best practices. And after you get that, and if you decide that that's something for you, you want to go into that PhD program. There is a difference. You can get a doctorate, or you can get a PhD. So the difference with those is a doctorate program is a program that you're going to get if you want to stay in industry. Let's say that you want to go into the government and you want to be a researcher for the government, but you want to stay in industry and not come over to academia. You want to look at a doctorate. They don't have as much research to do in the front end. Whereas with the PhD, what you are doing is you are saying that you are now an expert researcher. A PhD, that philosophy, doctorate of philosophy, is going to say that I have studied a certain topic or a certain issue that is in a certain field, and this is my specialty, and this is what I do, and this is what I know. So you have to be very conscious of the fact that whatever you get your PhD in should kind of mirror what your master's is in as well. And it should be in the discipline again that you want to teach in, because you can't teach in certain disciplines without a set number of hours in those actual courses.
Okay.
And the job market, I don't know. I think I tied into that already.
Yeah, you did. Yep. Yeah, you did. And then, of course, we talked about the ongoing research. So once you've nailed the job, obviously ongoing research and publication goes into it, which we touched on already. Okay, so let's talk about Glenda's story. All right, so you did your bachelor's, you kind of mentioned it before, but you did your bachelor's in business administration with the concentration in accounting, and then you went on to do your master's of accountancy, and then your PhD in business administration. So kind of walk us through this. It seems like you wanted to be an accountant. So kind of just tell us, how did it all start? What made you choose it, the path, everything, anything you could share with us about how you ended up going for PhD?
So I actually went straight from high school into college, into a regular 4-year university. And going into my 3rd year, I met a Navy sailor and fell in love and ended up getting married.
Yes.
And so I did not take the traditional route because he traveled so much, and because we had kids. I decided to switch from that traditional university to an online university so that I could take my classes regardless of whether he was here or not, which is why I switched to University of Phoenix. It took me about 10 years, do you understand, to finish my bachelor's degree.
Wow.
And taking 1 or 2 classes at a time, and having, we were young, 23 and 24, paying it ourselves, paying it as I went. So literally, I went to my graduation ceremony, and they were talking about different master's programs. And I was like, I want my master's in accountancy. And I think I really want to teach. I really want to start giving back. And so that's how I went straight into the master's program, not even 2 months after I finished with the bachelor's degree. And my husband was like, "Are you crazy?" Because you're 10 years, no? And so then when I went to my graduation for my master's, a person was getting their PhD, and it was so beautiful. I mean, it was really motivating to me and I love the hat. I was like, I want one of those little hats. That hat is fire, right? So honestly, that's the reason why I got the PhD, because I like
because you wanted to wear the hat.
I wanted to wear the hat. I was like, she is doing something. I honestly didn't. Neither one of my parents went to college. So I had no idea of what I was getting into. I just knew that I wanted to switch. I had been in the accounting field for 15 years. Accounting for 15 years gets redundant for the most part. I had been the only person of color at every place that I had gone, that I worked at. And I went to the HBCU, and I knew that there was a lot of us there. And I wanted to go back to give, to bring more people to the table that looked like me, was another part of that.
That's
And
amazing.
so I knew that I could do that with the PhD and get my hat at the same
Yeah,
time.
same time. Wow.
Situation.
I love your story. I love it because it's not traditional. And you said a lot of things here that I think really resonate, giving back. And I think that's big. I think that you wanting or having that desire to give back, and you felt the best way to do it was to be on the other side and give your insight. And so I think that's amazing. And then you bring up the other point of redundancy, right? A lot of professions, tend to be kind of doing the same thing every single day. So this brings in something different, right?
Hey, I mean, it's beautiful. You have students for literally 4 months out of a year, right? And
Yeah.
then you get a break, and they go on, and you might go to work every single day and see the same people every single day, and you get in a
Yes.
rut. You
Yes.
don't grow because you're around the same people all the time.
Yes.
In this area, you have no choice but to grow and to think differently because you interact with so many people every
Yes.
day. So
Yes. And you're seeing new faces constantly. You're meeting
absolutely.
new students. It's not the same students time and time again, but it's also beautiful because I guess you can kind of watch that student on their journey as well.
Oh yeah. On graduation, I feel like I have 100 students coming across that stage. Like it's like 100 of my babies are graduating and
Yes.
going.
Wow.
And they stay in touch. Like I had a text message from one that lives all the way in England today. Oh,
Wow.
it's a great feeling to see that you had an impact on somebody's life that is a positive impact.
Of course, of
Um,
course. Which I think
mhm.
leads us right into the next topic, which is industry experience. So you kind of hold a few different, you have a few hats, I should say here. So not only are you an assistant professor, but you're also the chair of your department, and you're a director of business incubator programs, which you're gonna have to tell us what all that is about. So kind of, I mean, we talked a lot about the assistant professor. So obviously in that hat, you're teaching, you're advising, anything else there in that hat?
No, for the most part, that's everything that we talked about before.
Okay, so tell us about the other two, please.
So, as a chair, you are in charge of an entire department. So, we have a chair of marketing, we have a chair of management. I'm the chair of business administration. That means that you're in charge of doing all of the administrative stuff as well. So, if somebody wants to change their major, you have to do their change of major for them. If companies want to talk to you about the department and try to get in touch with your students, they have to come through you. It's just all of the back end administrative stuff on top of actually teaching as well, which I love because even though accounting was redundant to me, I'm a tasker. So I like to have things that are tasks that I can change. You are a part of the curriculum, right? So you get to decide which courses you would like to bring in and how to change the curriculum. Of course, with the support of your faculty, it's like a management role. Is truly what that is.
Okay. Okay. And so
And
are you delegating? I guess you're kind of representing your department pretty much.
you are, and
Okay.
there is some delegation, but there's some stuff that, of course, because you're the chair, you are privy to.
Got
So
it.
um, you're doing the evaluations for the professors. If there's an issue with a professor, then they come to you with the issue. So you're also the grievance person as well.
Got it.
You are the person that if somebody is asking for an exception to a rule, then they have to come to you.
Got
So,
it.
say
So
somebody to substitute a course, you would approve the
yes,
substitution.
got it. So
Yeah.
I guess my question here would be, so how were you able to, I guess, did you start in that role, or which role did you start with first, and did it gradually go into the other role as chair or vice versa?
So I wasn't in any of these roles when I started. So,
Okay.
so I started as an instructor. I've been where I am now. This is my 8th year actually, but I
Wow.
started as an instructor in enrollment management.
Okay.
So I was just teaching 2 classes a semester, and then for the rest of the time, I was in charge of meeting and advising every single senior in our school, which was probably about 250 seniors. So I would meet individually with everybody to make sure that they were graduating on time and to make sure that they had a plan post-graduation. And then about 2 years ago, the chair of the department that I'm in, she created this whole program over 20 years ago. She decided that she wanted to step down from chair, and I was the person that she selected to take her place, which I consider such an honor because, you know, that's her baby. And so I shadowed her for a year, and then I transitioned after shadowing her for a year to become the chair of the department.
Wow. So at this point, you were already assistant professor, and then she selected you to be the chair.
I became assistant professor at the same time that I became the chair.
Wow.
So for those at the same time.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us now about what is the director of business incubator programs?
So we were just talking about COVID a few minutes ago, and as a director of business incubator programs is actually attached to COVID. So in October, a colleague and I were awarded $17.7 million to create an incubator.
Say that one more time.
So this is those grants that we talked about. So we wrote a grant over the summer with some other colleagues. And we ended up, so a grant proposal comes out and you're supposed to write to say that you can do this grant. But 30 states that applied, there was one application per state. There were 30 states that applied. There were 8 states that were funded, and we were one of them. And we got $17.7 million to create a business incubator for people that either have small businesses that want to create a small business, or they want to transition a business that they already have that has been impacted by COVID. So we are teaching them, you know, the business essentials. We are teaching them, for those that want to transition, we have partnerships with different corporations that have courses. We have different courses to help them with marketing and legal and all of that stuff. So for this program, there is the executive director, who is my colleague, and then I'm second in charge as the director of business incubator programs. And so we just were funded last October. We kind of just opened our doors on April 14th, and we've already up to about 60 participants. And we are actually servicing the entire state of Virginia. So if you are in Virginia and you want to start a business or transition your business, or you just need help with your business, you are impacted by COVID, which is all of us, because we're all virtual right now. Who was not impacted by COVID? Exactly. And you are a resident, a student, or faculty member in Virginia, then you are eligible to receive assistance from us. And everything is free of cost, and we even have it. So, you know, it's just frosted on the top of the cake as well.
That is awesome.
All we ask for is time and dedication. So that's what the director of business incubator programs is.
And you talked about giving back. If that's not giving back, I don't know what is. So you're not even giving back to the university community, but you're giving back to your local community, the state. So you're taking it to a whole nother level of giving back. So that's amazing. That is amazing. All right, so we've already kept it real, but let's keep on doing it. So let's go into the real deal. So first and foremost, what would you have done differently?
I think I would have researched a little bit more into the programs and the things that I was doing. I kind of, as you saw, because I like the hat, right?
Yeah. Everybody's going to remember that. I think that's what everybody's going to
So PhD program, I probably should have prepared a lot more than what I did. So I would have done that differently. I remember the stats test that the first day of class, and the professor just wrote no on the paper. And I'm like, what is no? Like, what does that mean? And every time I ask him, because now he actually is in my department. Can you imagine? I'm his chair. And I'm like,
Wow.
what does that mean? You know?
You should write no.
Yeah. I'm gonna write no on his evaluation and be like, oh no.
That is
No, I would never do that because I love him to death. But I would just have researched a little bit more.
Mm. Okay. Were mentors helpful along the way?
Oh, absolutely. Mentors are the reason why I am where I am. Dr. Sid, the doctor that was over the program
Yes.
was a mentor. You know, when you're in the PhD program, they tell you that the job that you're in will not be the job that you're in when you leave.
Yes.
And so you have to have a mentor for you to be able to handle what's happening in your life as you are going through the program. It's a big transition. It's a big change in your mindset, a big shift in your paradigm. And so also when you are going through, when you're going through the process, you honestly don't know what you're doing. You need a mentor to lead you, to listen to you, provide guidance for you. They're key in everything that you're going to do.
Of course. And of course, keeping it real. Of course.
Absolutely.
Right?
You're like, you're not going to save the world. Just write your paper. Okay.
Exactly. Exactly. So mentorship is important here. And I guess a question here would be, now, this mentor that you mentioned, was this person in your working the same place where you were, or did you have to like do research to find this person?
They were where I was. So all of my mentors came into play some kind of way in my life during the transition.
Through the journey, pretty much. Yeah. All right. What are some of the biggest misconceptions?
Some of the biggest misconceptions is that being a professor is easy. And it's not a lot of work. It is still a lot of work. You still have to put your time and effort into it. You're not going to just throw it. You have probably about 100 to 120 personalities that you're working with all the time.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's a place where you can define yourself and define what you're going to teach and what deliverables you're going to make for the students as well.
Exactly. And I think that leads into, what is the most challenging thing that you find?
So the most challenging thing are the students for me. You know, it's one thing when you are in not in higher education, but you're teaching in K through 12. You know, when they come to us, they're adults. They are considered to be independent from their families. But many are still not independent from their families, and we're getting them in those transition years where they feel like they should make certain decisions and be in charge of their lives, but yet are still they're not in charge of their lives as well. And so the most challenging part is to, as a professor, make sure that you are looking at things from the student's perspective sometimes instead of just your own. So for every individual student, there is going to be a different answer or a different way of support. So you have to try to be everything for everybody. So that's kind of challenging.
So you can't really be, you know, in your own way. You have to use different approaches. You have to be flexible and kind of mold yourself to the student pretty much, which is kind of like your customer almost, right? So making sure that they take away whatever it is you're trying to give them at the end of the day.
Yeah, because they're choosing you and your major. So
Exactly. What is the biggest reward for you?
Oh man, watching them get those degrees, coming across that stage with those robes on. Our program over its 20 years has had 100% placement every single year. So you're talking 50 Black students going into industry, and not small companies either. Some making six figures. That's impactful. They're going to go and sit at a table.
Yeah.
So the biggest reward for me is watching them come across that stage on graduation day.
Yeah. That means you did what you did it right. You did your job.
Yes,
That makes it all
yes,
worth it, pretty much.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So this we kind of touched on, but how has the industry changed? So you've been teaching for 8 years now. How is it different from when you started? I mean, let's not even bring in COVID, obviously, but even from when you first entered to now, how is it different?
It's very different. In the state that I'm in, I think that they are actually thinking about making community college free of charge for students, right? And so, as an industry, as a 4-year university, we have to think about that. You know, how are you going to transfer in students? You know, are you going to give them the credits and everything that they deserve? Students are coming in with college credits already. That's not something that was actually common 10 years ago, or even really 5 years ago. And then when we look at the companies, they're not looking for as many technical skills as they were looking for before. Remember, for my generation, we had to go to the library to get information. This generation doesn't. They just need to know how to find the information. They don't have to carry it around in their heads as much. And so now industries are looking for people that can find information, that can take the information and analyze it. So more data analytics and an analytical mindset instead of just technical knowledge. And they're looking for people with more soft skills. So can you talk to somebody? Can you hold the conversation? Can you carry yourself well and represent the company? Because think about how the whole world is all about community and social awareness, right? Those things are things that they expect for us to ingrain in them at the university, and that was not the case before.
Yeah. Before it was just kind of like teaching your specialization, your discipline, and that was it.
Yeah, it was all about the textbook. You care if they had a personality or not. But
Yeah.
now, personality is important. It's key to them getting in the door.
Yeah. So it's almost become like it's kind of a one-on-one approach, more of that kind of that mass approach where you have the same approach for everybody. Here you're kind of it's one-on-one.
Yep, it's a holistic individual plan for each
Yeah.
student. Mhm.
Wow. And then the last question here is there room for growth? I think we've seen it with you, but please elaborate.
Oh, there's always room to grow. The industry and the world is changing every single day. I mean, we just went straight to 5G, right? What's after 5G? Nobody knows.
Oh, nope.
But when it comes, you have to be ready to jump on board, right?
Yep.
So there's always room for growth. There's room for more. Do you know that PhDs are only 1% of the population? That's deep. 1% only. And so, there's always more room to educate more people. Absolutely.
Yes. Wow. And I think that leads right into the takeaway. I think what you just said, that 1%, that is the takeaway. So if someone's thinking about going into education, what would you say?
I would say make sure that you are ready. Make sure it's something you want to do.
Yeah.
This is not something that you come in and do lightly because you don't want to work all year or because you're tired of your job.
Yeah.
Make sure that you want to be here because you are impacting somebody's life. And if you're not coming in with a positive mindset and your mindset is negative, you are putting your negative mentality on over 100 students.
Yes.
So make sure that this is where you want to be and this is what you want to do.
That's big. So we do have a few questions coming in. So one question we have here is, do you have to be a full-time professor to be a tenure faculty?
Yes, you do.
Okay. So, and I think that kind of is the difference. We kind of mentioned it. We didn't have it on the screen, but I guess an adjunct, right? Is that the difference?
Yes.
Okay. So an adjunct. Yeah.
You can be an adjunct, or you can also be a part-time professor as well. But most part-time professors are not eligible for tenure.
Okay. Okay. So you have to be full-time.
Yes.
And another question we have, can a professor work full-time at multiple universities?
Ooh, so most universities that you are a full-time professor at, you have to get permission to even adjunct somewhere else.
Okay.
And that's because of proprietary information that you have about the university. And if you were to go somewhere else and you're working full time and you do research, it gets really sticky. So you have to get the permission of your university first.
Okay. And then another question we have is it a competitive field to get into?
It is very competitive. For the most part, honestly, depending on the universities and where you're going to go, you almost have to create a relationship with somebody to get in. Remember, I said it's only 1% of the population. And once you start going to different places, you find out that it's a very small community. So I have a position open right now, and I would say that I probably have about 30 applications for one position.
Wow.
So it's very competitive.
And I think that leads into the next question, which is what qualities do you, I mean, especially you as you're looking at applicants, what qualities are you looking for?
So you want that person to be an expert in their field, but you also want them to be able to connect and engage with the students. That's important for me. You want to make sure, again, that the person is there for a good reason. They have to know why they're coming in. They have to be an expert at their field, because I can't teach a course. I might be accounting, I might need a marketing person, or I might need a management person. I need you to be good at the discipline in which you are coming in. I want you to know how to create a syllabus. I want you to know how to pick a textbook that is a great textbook when it comes to the levels of the textbook. I want you to be able to talk to each student as an individual and understand some of their needs as well. You also have to be able to take criticism. You have to be open to adjusting and growing on your own as well.
Okay. And I guess what are some things you would look for on like a resume for definitely teaching experience, right?
I would look for teaching experience. To me, it's also important for some industry experience. So
Okay.
if for me, if you're teaching about something, you have to know about the field and have some skin in the game on where you're sending your students to. So it's hard for you to prepare a student to go into an industry that you never sat in.
Got it. Got it. All right. I think that's all we have for questions. So Dr. Evans, thank you so much for spending the time with us tonight. We got so much great insight. You kept it real. So we thank you so much for sharing your insight with us. And I thank everyone for tuning in this evening. Please be sure to register by going to our website, www.studentproconnect.com, or you can download our app, which is available in Google Play and the App Store. And if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe. If you're not, please subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can find all of our episodes. And if you're watching on Facebook, thank you so much. Please like our page, follow our page. Our next show will be on June 2nd. So please mark your calendars for that. We have a lot of great things happening and coming your way. So please look out for announcements. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.